greatest strength of the United States is not all the fancy toys we have in our military, our ability to make things blow up all around the world at one time. No, our greatest strength is this, the US dollar. And the reason it's our greatest strength is that this is the standard unit of purchase for everything in the world. If you're Brazil and you're selling some iron ore to China, which, by the way, they sell a lot of steel to China these days, but it's priced in US dollars. That's the currency of the world reserve. Because of this, everybody all around the world keeps some of these on hand, US dollars, because, you know, the price goes up and down with respect to their local currency, and, well, you know, you want to have something in the bank. What they tend to hold are not dollars themselves, but Treasury bills. They're basically the same thing, the promissory note from the US government, convertible to regular US dollars on a moment's notice, but they bear interest. And that's where it gets interesting, because all of these countries, like say China and Brazil, that own a tremendous amount of our debt, are only doing it because they have to. Countries typically have the total in their banking system about 6 months of their exports or imports, whichever is bigger, in reserve in US dollars. China's actually kind of lean at 4 months worth, but that adds up to a bit over $1 trillion of our debt that they hold. Funny thing happened in 2008. Federal Reserve cut interest rates down to 0, and suddenly there's no reason to hold US debt anymore. It doesn't pay interest. Basically, it's sitting around doing nothing. And that's when it got really, really interesting. An agreement was just signed at the end of March 2012 called the Delhi Declaration between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS nations. Basically, they agreed to set up a development bank so that they could start trading in their own local currencies. They're not going to be using US dollars anymore. They're going to be using stuff like this, the Chinese yuan, renminbi, people's currency. It's great stuff, kind of colorful. What does that mean for the US dollar? It means a lot. If you've been paying attention to our trade deficit, you'll know that, well, basically nothing is made in this country anymore. We have all kinds of fancy gizmos and gadgets like this that are made in Korea that we've been getting. And in exchange, we've been sending out dollars. In fact, we have a net outflow of about $7.8 trillion over the last 20 years from our country to others. What we make in this country are dollars. We send them overseas, and they give us stuff. It's been a great arrangement. And it's been made possible by the simple fact that the dollar is the world's internet standard for everything. But that's not going to hold forever. That's what China and Brazil, they're sick and tired of having to buy our debt and to do everything in dollars. And they're going to start doing it in their own currencies. What happens when nobody in the world needs dollars anymore? These things become a lot less valuable. And it means that we're going to have to put up a lot more of them to buy the fancy gizmos from around the world. Everything changes. Everything that we know in our economy suddenly becomes a lot more expensive. Now, there is an upside to this. In the last 12 years, we've lost about 1/3 of our manufacturing jobs. We went from 18 to 12 million people employed in manufacturing. The dollar becomes cheaper. Well, it's cheaper to make goods here. So we might actually start making things in this country again, and that's a great source of employment. So there's an upside to the whole thing. But we have to go into it with our eyes open and carefully manage what's going on and make sure that countries like China don't just dump us all of a sudden to make this the standard of the world. Because if we have to start buying these, you can imagine what the price becomes like. And that is the biggest crisis facing us right now. And it doesn't seem to get talked about at all. That's the scary part. There's nothing about this that we can't work out together if we put our minds to it. But we're not even close to noticing.